And we are live. Dr. J here in the house. Today we're going to be chatting about gluten-free. Do I need to go gluten-free even if I think I can tolerate it? This is a common thing out there. I see a lot of edgy so-called functional medicine doctors saying, "Oh, you can eat gluten, you can do all these things, no problem, not an issue. You should still be able to get better even if you're eating all this processed food." We're going to dive into that theory out there. And before we do, please smash that like button, put your comments down below. Love to hear your thoughts on the matter. So, first off, when it comes to health, we want to have a philosophical construct of what does a healthy diet look like. We want some level of agreement. Most people are going to agree that there should be some kind of a whole food diet. Is going to be, if you're following the Pareto principle, 80% of the time you should be doing at least a whole food, nutrient dense, anti-inflammatory diet. Some people may say, "Hey, no meat, no this, fat's bad." I would say you got to look at food from a perspective of evolution, how long certain foods have been around, when you have winter, when you have cold. Obviously being a vegetarian, vegan in the winter does not make sense because you never had the ability to keep vegetables and carbohydrates good that long. You had to have fat, you had to have protein. Now, to what degrees we can talk about. And then we look at our carbohydrates. We have our vegetables, we have which are non-starchy, low carbs. We have our starchy carbohydrates that are grain free, but more of our root vegetables that are going to have more carbohydrates. We have some fruits, berries, those kind of things. And more than likely, in Paleolithic times, we probably had less berries, less sugar, just because those things were pretty rare. But we probably had some vegetables, may have had some tubers and roots and things like that. Definitely had protein, definitely had fats. And so we got to adjust that according to what your body needs. All right. So first thing is anti-inflammatory, nutrient dense, low toxin. Now we have the advent of agriculture about 10,000 years ago. Lots of Neolithic foods have come from agriculture because we had grains and we have processed flours now come out of the grains and grinding that up. And then we had a lot of processed sugar, whether it's from, corn and high fructose corn syrups. Now the grains and the sugar are now making up a lot of the processed foods. And these foods are Neolithic, meaning we haven't had time for our DNA to see these foods over the short period of time they've been around. Now, since that time frame, we've been able to see data on things like molecular mimicry, on gut permeability, on phytates, on anti-nutrients, and these things can be a stressor on the body. They can impact digestion, they can impact gut absorption. We have things like Roundup residue, glyphosate. These things can impact the gut lining, gut permeability. We know FODMAPs and fermentability aspects. These can also impact your gut if you have dysbiotic bacteria, SIBO, or IBS type of symptoms, bloating, gas, motility. These can all be a stressor. So first things first, can gluten be an issue even if I think I'm not sensitive? Yeah, I think it can be. Now, to what degree you have to be militant over it? Ideally, I like the Pareto principle. 80% of the time you're on, 20% of the time you aren't, right? I like that. For some people that works. If you have autoimmune conditions, known autoimmune thyroid issues, known autoimmune gut issues, you may have to nix that and be 100% off gluten. Number two, can we handle other healthier gluten-free options? Can you handle like a rice flour? Can you handle cassava root? Can you handle any nut-based flours, coconut? Some can. And so I always tell patients, you're better off choosing an alternative that's in that direction than just eating gluten by itself. And then if there's autoimmune issues, the biggest problem that we have with gluten is its gut permeability aspect. So we know with the studies on non-celiac gluten sensitivity that gluten in and of itself, even if you're not having a reaction, symptoms, bloating, gas, you can increase gut permeability. This gut permeability can then allow your food proteins to get in the bloodstream, and that can have a greater chance of exacerbating autoimmunity. That's the big thing. It can exacerbate autoimmunity because it's allowing that sieve of those tight junctions to open up, and then foods and bacteria to kind of get in and create more of an immune response than if that wasn't happening. Next thing is, when you look at grains and gluten by itself, does it have some missing nutrient, some excellent phytonutrient, some type of compound in there that you can't get from other healthy vegetables or maybe even fruit or starch? No, not really, not even close. And so when you look at gluten, when you look at grains, there's other substitutes that will still hit all the nutritional check boxes that we want. It'll still give you maybe some of the starch or the carbohydrate that you want if you need that for activity. And it's going to give you some of the fiber for your gut bacteria. What it's not going to have is some of the excess lectins or phytates or anti-nutrients. It's not going to have maybe the excess Roundup residue, right? Usually soy and corn and grains are going to be big in that. and it's not going to have as much gut permeability like effects. So when I look at that, I look at anti-nutrients. Check, that's there. That's a problem. That's a negative. Gut permeability effects, increasing gut permeability. Yes. FODMAP issues. So a lot of people that are already having gut issues and IBS stuff, is it going to have the fermentability that could increase the SIBO and the bad bacteria? Yes. Does it have other things in there like or phytates or other types of lectins or anti-nutrients that could aggravate the gut? Yes. And so I look at it like this. If you can handle it and you're healthy and you have no known autoimmune conditions, follow the 80-20 principle. If you have some kind of health issue, then maybe 80% of the time you're on, and then you try to do another gluten-free grain like a rice or corn or oat or something safe starch 20% of the time. If you know you're really sensitive and you know you have known autoimmune conditions, then try that 20% to keep it to other safe starches, whether it's potato, cassava, yucca, banana, plantain. Try to be 100% safe starch with your starch gluten options, right? You want that mouthfeel, right? With the True Food Kitchen, they had a banana-based chocolate chip cookie with coconut flour, right? Excellent. Good option. Still grain-free. Still gives me that mouthfeel and that starchy feel that I want in the cookie. So you kind of look at it like that. 80-20 if you're just straight up good. If not, 80-20 with that 20% gluten-free. Choose other safer grains like rice flour. And that more sensitive side where I sit, try to choose other types of safe starches that are used interchangeably. Cassava, the Siete brand's wonderful, that are going to have no gluten options, and they're going to be safe starches, and they're not going to have as much of the anti-nutrient and the gut permeability factors. So I hope that makes sense for you guys, and that's something that can resonate. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to be edgy and trying to really say, oh, no, you can get better with this. Maybe. I mean, it just depends where you sit, right? You got to look at that individual. Do you have known autoimmune issues, known gut issues? How long have you been sick for? The longer someone who has been sick, the more significant the changes have to be with their diet, because we have to move that cruise ship, right? Your health is like a cruise ship, and it takes time to slow it down and turn it around. And so the longer you've been sick, the more inertia you have going in one direction. We have to slow it down and reverse it. Someone wrote in here, is cassava flour too high in carbs? So this conversation is separate than your macronutrients. So once you look at everything else regarding kind of inflammation in food, then you got to look at it and say, hey, am I insulin resistant? Or these type of carbohydrates too high for me? That's a separate conversation. Because if you're very insulin resistant, then you may need to be focusing on just meat and vegetables and maybe a little bit of these type of extra carbs like fruit or starch. And so yet that's a whole separate conversation where if you're insulin resistant, then you really got to be careful with anything outside of just your low sugar fruit and your non-starchy vegetables on the carb side. Great question. Yeah, I mean, kidney cancer, if you have kidney cancer or kidney issues, remember most kidney stressors are going to be from glucose. 80% of kidney transplants happen to diabetics, and insulin is going to be a really powerful fuel for cancer. So yeah, you got to be careful with that for sure. I agree. Yeah, just don't get caught up in this, guys. Look at where you're at. See what bucket you fit in. I'm pretty healthy. I do great. No known autoimmune conditions. I feel okay with some gluten. Then follow 80-20. Again, remember, these type of foods are processed foods anyway, right? They're mostly going to be in processed flours, cookies, cakes, pastas. People aren't going and having that dense einkorn wheat that we had 100 years ago when you have a loaf of bread and it's like a hockey puck. It's solid. The breads that we have today are totally different than we have 100 years ago. And then also, obviously, if any type of grains that you have, you're better off replacing it with green vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, or other safe starches. And then just plug in gluten-free or ideally grain-free, autoimmune-free on that front. Any questions, guys, feel free and chime in. I'd like to know what your thoughts on the matter are. And if you're on the fence, you can also do some genetic testing. You can do some of the HLA-DQ testing to see if genetically you have that 2 or 8 or that alpha 1, beta 1, 1 or 3. Again, this just gives you a more likelihood that you could be more celiac. And again, you can be gluten sensitive and not be celiac, right? Celiac, you have to have this extra level of damage caused by the gluten with your microvilli shifting or transglutaminase or endomysial antibodies. People can have gluten issues, have IBS, gut issues, brain fog, fatigue, and not necessarily present any of the hallmark celiac symptoms. It's very common. So keep that in the back of your head, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you got some help from this article. If you did, feel free to put your comments down below. Love to know your thoughts on it. Coordinates will be below if you guys want to reach out to myself or staff. We're happy to help you out on the functional medicine side worldwide if you guys want more support. Feel free. There'll be a link below. All right, guys, take care. Have a great day. Bye now.